So first, let me introduce Adriana Zaluka, who is my collaborator from FOTech. FOTech ran a very successful program in November, had 600 RSVPs and 400 attended the program. Let me just turn it over to Adriana, and then I'll bring it back to Andy Fox. Okay, Adriana?
Thank you, Phil, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Tech-NEW-logy Institute program. So as Phil mentioned, and as many of you know, FOTech and Tech-NEW-logy Institute, we collaborate closely on these programs, and we have the recordings on our website. As Phil mentioned, last month, we hosted, or FOTech in collaboration also with Phil, hosted our first virtual large-scale Tech and Ops conference for family offices. And this went well. Many of you were part of it. We had all around very positive feedback with particular interest in the content and the networking. So we're taking all of this in and are now planning our next conference in the second half of 2024. And we will also be holding regular networking meetings. So more on that will be coming from me and my partner, Alex, soon. Today's recording will be available as always on our website, so we will also let everyone know. And if you would like to see the previous recordings or stay in the loop on what we're planning, please register on our website if you're not already. Again, many of you will be registered, but if you're not, I'm going to post a link in the chat. So that's the link. And I just remains for me to say I look forward to today's program with Andy, Elvira, John, and Michael. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So Andy and I have been friends for a very long time. I've worked with him in all different capacities. He's a true wealth management professional. He's had 35 years of experience. The last 16 years in family office space as a COO or CFO of a few family offices that I've worked with. His expertise is in investment accounting and reporting, operations and administration. Andy represented the first office to implement the SCI Archway product, which was successfully completed due to Andy's background and experience. Before working for single family offices, Andy spent 10 years as a managing director at U.S. Trust, responsible for client service and relationship management for the high net worth client base with over $30 billion in assets. He also worked at Union Bank of Switzerland and started his career at Goldman Sachs. He currently provides consulting services to single and multifamily offices, and I've enjoyed working with him in different capacities over the years. Andy, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Phil. It's been a pleasure working with you all these years as well. Thank you, Adriana. So we have two groups that we're going to be talking to today. We're going to start off with RSM and their FamilySight product, and then we're going to move on to Elvira Orzo and Trusted Family product. So let's start with RSM. We have John Castrucci and Michael Johnson joining us from RSM, and maybe you guys can give a quick introduction to everyone.
Sure. Hi, this is John Castrucci. I'm Managing Director in our Family Office Enterprise Advisory Services practice. And let me turn it over to Michael.
Great. Mike Johnson, tax partner out of our Chicago office. I also lead up our technology efforts as it relates to the family office technology practice nationwide, and working with John in a lot of the single family offices and multi-family offices that we work with.
All right, great. So let's start by talking about RSM. Who is RSM? What services does it provide? And who is its client base?
Thank you, Andy. RSM is the fifth largest accounting firm in the U.S. With a global reach in over 120 countries. About 5 years ago, the organization, due to the growth in the family office space, put together a national family office capability referred to as Family Office Enterprise Channel. This services family businesses, their investment structure, and their family offices. We have about 500 single family offices that we're servicing currently, with over 30 plus multifamily offices, and that's supported by 800 professionals across the US and globally in over 40 countries. Our core service offering is tax and consulting. Our discipline is focused through what we refer to our family office operational excellence, which is essentially done through webcasts and training and so forth that's focused on people, process, technology, data, and governance. We support our families essentially through a assessment process where we're supporting the family office community, where we're assessing, we're designing, we're implementing. And one thing that what's attracted me to RSM, bringing my consulting practice here, is that we can operate and monitor. We do that through this rapid assessment approach for family offices, and where we can operate and monitor, we could provide kind of family office services managed in a box. What that means is we can provide finance, accounting, outsourcing, human resource outsourcing, managed IT infrastructure outsourcing. We do this through a process of designing, setting up family offices, both on an operational side and a tax structuring side through evaluating the lender structure. We do a lot of technology search and selection. We are a reseller of many family office enterprise level technology products such as Sage Intacct, Microsoft Dynamics, NetSuite. And we wrap these types of technology products, including our fund services plus our partner site. And we wrap all these technologies through a dashboard that we created this through our innovation lab led by Mike Johnson as our technology leader in the family office enterprise space. We pull this all together in a dashboard called FamilySight.
So let's talk a little bit more about FamilySight. I'm assuming it was created to start because you've got this large group of families that you support, and you needed a way to communicate with them and provide added services. But let's just talk about what are the attributes of FamilySight and what can it do for a typical family?
Yeah, it's a great question, Andy, and you're absolutely right in terms of that creation of FamilySight and that journey we've been on. Realizing that within the 500 family offices that we serve, there was a lot of different issues, and everyone was kind of experiencing a lot of the same similar pain points in terms of where technology would lay them down, and realizing that within the market, many technologies existed to solve problems, but to John's point, there wasn't many technologies that bridged the gap between those softwares and technologies to make sure that the data could be used in a multitude of ways, more to the advantage of the family. So, again, we would solve one problem but create other ones. And so we realized that with us being uniquely positioned as a trusted advisor within the family office enterprise, we could be in a spot to create technology. That's where FamilySight was kind of born out of, was that kind of journey of realizing that the market wasn't going to provide it in certain ways. Maybe we could be the one that could fill in here and allow the transparency of the data to flow to the families and family members in ways that maybe haven't been before. And so, FamilySight is one of those things that is unique to each family. And I think that's the important part here, is that we're not a traditional technology vendor and creator. As you heard it from John, we're a top 5 accounting firm here in the US. And so for us to create technology, we looked at it and said, how would our clients use it? What are our clients, kind of looking for it? And where do we solve some of these issues, not only in providing better service to our clients, but more collaboration between RSM and those clients as well. And so, on the face of it, every client that works with family offices now within the family office enterprise practice can have access to FamilySight from a dashboard perspective. And what that means is that we can provide, obviously, secure document storage, task management, the ability to look at in a org chart that's dynamic, ways to collaborate with the family. And then you also look at the ability to bolt on different technologies along the way. And we have a saying within the practice here at RSM about meeting the client where they are on their journey. Realizing that many family offices are either in the creation phase of that, as John talked about in our assessments, but some of them are more established and already have technologies to play. And so, we can add in wealth aggregation. We can bring in alternative aggregation to bring those numbers and data to life for our clients. But we also can look at that outsourced accounting side of things and bring bill pay and the general ledger components. And so really kind of understanding kind of what is the client's goals, what are the client's needs with technology, and making sure that we can fit in our modules along with them so that it's not overkill for them. We're not trying to sell every piece of technology to every client. It's really trying to understand those clients' needs and goals and tailoring an experience for them in a way that provides technology to be given to them and be able to be used by them in the proper way. I also think that we're a little bit different in the wealth aggregation space, right? We do use and are able to implement Mastro in the market, so we have that as our opportunity to work with. But I think for us it goes beyond that. We talked about and we look at a centralized kind of database, right? Being able to pull data from one source and being able to use it in other sources. We have the ability to extract information out of a Sage Intacct and out of Mastro and others, and be able to visualize things in Power BI that I think is what our clients are looking for. So it's taking what they would normally get as a static report and making them dynamic in ways where we hear from our clients all the time, I want to see this or I want to see that, and I can't find a report that does that. We can create that for our clients using our Power BI visualizations and pulling data from different sources to make it kind of unique and dynamic for that client. So really kind of trying to provide a different experience for our clients using the different technologies that we offer part of our program.
So essentially, you've kind of created a central database of client financial information, pulling from all the systems that you integrate with. And from that, you have this flexibility to create customized reports for clients, which is in a lot of cases what a lot of family offices are looking for. So you've almost taken the best of, family goes out and gets a best of breed system, and you need several of them to really round out your technology infrastructure. Families have always had the problem of reconciling in between those systems, and now what do I do? I've got all these great best of breed systems, but they don't reconcile between each other. And that seems to be the biggest problem. There's not many integrated solutions out there. So you seem to have sort of bridged the gap of creating something that helps in all that process. Going forward, how can something like that help a family office that's struggling with those problems?
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it in terms of kind of what we're looking to do is, that the ability to take what we find to be a very manual kind of outdated process and automate that. Every family office is always running. You don't have excess capacity. You don't have people just sitting around, looking for things to do. And so, if we can come in and understand where or what vendors they're using, and being able to look at and say, can we build a bridge from one of those to the next? I think there's a lot of value in being able to have those systems talk to each other and have the data flow. To your point, that to me is a game changer in the market in a way where we're working towards being agnostic towards the vendor side of things and looking at each client as an experience to figure out what is it that they're looking to do. And some families don't need integration. Some families are working just fine the way they are, and we won't upsell them and work through that. But I think as we look through it, we've hired some solutions engineers on our side to look at how does the data work, how does the data flow, and just try to have that experience for each client be unique and tailored in a way where we can provide that white glove service that we offer on our accounting side and traditional tax and consulting side here on the technology side as well. John, anything to add there?
Sure. As a user of the FamilySight platform, when we're onboarding families, one of the things that we see that families really appreciate is the ability to layer in, not only we have the financial package and the investment aggregation package, but layer in a level of entity management, document management technology, so that a family can now have better access to their technology and their data in a more organized fashion. So when we're onboarding that client, we collect that data, we organize that data. We now have that one source of truth in providing clients with that entity management, legal entity management, and document management storage. And then we're drawing from that between whether it's Sage Intacct and Mastro, we're drawing these entity flowcharts for clients that become more integrated, so both the advisors and the families can see how their entities are structured and set up in a more usable fashion. We do see that something like this will certainly help clients going forward into 2024 with managing through the Corporate Transparency Act.
So obviously FamilySight can be used by both family office employees as well as family members. Well, what would you say to a family that's sitting on QuickBooks or Excel and is looking to improve on their reporting environment and wants to get off those systems? What options does RSM and FamilySight offer for those families?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I would say, again, if we're sitting on Excel and QuickBooks, there probably needs some work to look at, and realizing that what they're working on a monthly basis is a very manual, repetitive process overall. And what I would say is that we do have that ability to do wealth aggregation through Mastro. We can implement that from an overall kind of enterprise platform standpoint. We also use Canoe Intelligence on our side to look at the alternative aggregation, knowing that within family offices, alternative aggregation and alternatives are a big pain point in being able to retrieve the documents as well as read those documents in a real time on a consistent basis. And then obviously looking through and looking at, is QuickBooks providing the right kind of style for them in working through, the different kind of entities that they have. Most, family offices have more than one, entity involved in being able to look at maybe Sage Intacct or even the NetSuites, in terms of, is there a different platform that's more sophisticated in a way that will allow the data to work for them and not having to look at and close different operations within QuickBooks. We would look at all those kind of options and see, are those the best options for them? But we also realize that, what we have from a technology standpoint isn't always what our clients are looking for, realizing that maybe they want something else that's in the market, and we'll talk to them about what else we've seen in the market and what else is out there, and realizing that, we want the clients to be happy with their technology. And John talked about this in the intro in terms of technology search and selection, and making sure that, we're not just pushing it because, well, here's what we have. We have many clients that have different wealth aggregation systems, maybe like an Adapar or different ones. And our plan is to make sure that we can work with and talk with many different vendors along the way. Right now it's mainly Mastro, but realizing that, those relationships can grow and work down the path of being agnostic towards that, and making sure that, as we listen to those goals and needs of the family, making sure that we're offering those solutions that kind of fit the need where they're going to it. So, I would say today, historically, we would look at Mastro, Canoe, and probably Sage Intacct as our go-to. But realizing that down the path, we're probably going to have to add in additional technologies as clients come to us with different vendors along the way.
So so you could provide, as we've discussed, an outsourced solution where a client can come in and just use or have you run the setup or systems as you've put together. They could also, I guess, purchase or run it in their offices, but leverage some of what you guys have done as well. And they can also, I guess, purchase it through you, maybe at preferential pricing, because you have a relationship with some of these vendors that you've built FamilySight around. And so I guess I'm just trying to understand what are those options for a client? Obviously, if a client were on totally different technology, there might be pieces that can help, but if they liked what you guys were doing, how would that work? And
Sure.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, Andy, I think good point about the challenges that families are facing today, particularly around people-related issues in terms of hiring, engaging, and retaining talent. So what we're seeing clients through our assessment process, we're really helping clients identify, should they insource, should they outsource, or is there a co-source model that can be helpful here? So for example, we may have a client that is transitioning technology, and they want the technology to be run inside their own office, supported by their own people. We can bring that Sage Intacct instance into or the NetSuite or Microsoft platforms into the organization where they're insourcing it. If a family has made a decision and we're helping them weigh the pros and cons of outsourcing, they can outsource to our what we refer to as our FAO group, our finance accounting outsourcing group, where we're doing the bill pay, accounting, consolidated reporting. We have a team that begins the development process. There's an onboarding and implementation team, and then there's the service team that essentially takes over and executes the service to client. So you can outsource that component. In both of those instances, the dashboard is available for the client who has an insource approach or an outsource approach in using FAO as an example. Same thing you would say on the wealth aggregation, insource or outsource capabilities as well in terms of how they operate Mastro or in Canoe. I think the key to where we're heading in the future here is to be able to build an integrated model where we're limiting the amount of manual work through Excel and automating as much as possible. So we're starting to develop the concepts of middleware technology where we can push and pull data in from the financial side and into the investment side, so we can eliminate some duplication of entries. That is an ongoing process currently, but we're seeing that as a trend towards the future needs of these larger single-family offices.
That makes a lot of sense. So if someone were to want to move in that direction, how long does the implementation process typically take for both going, I guess, if they went outsourced to you guys totally, or you would then help them potentially do it in-house?
Mike, do you want to respond on the investment side, and I'll jump in on the FAO side if you like.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's a great question. I think we traditionally are looking at probably a 90-day implementation kind of process for us on the aggregation side. Some have gone shorter, some have gone a little bit longer. I think a lot of it depends on, where do they have investments at? Where are we from an overall kind of number of accounts, and how organized is the client? We've had some clients that are very, very organized and have come in, and we can implement them very quickly because we know where the assets are owned and who owns them, and be able to work through there. And some we've gone on a due diligence kind of effort, and we've found new assets along the way that the client maybe didn't even have tracking before. And so, I think it really kind of depends on there. what we look at from an implementation standpoint, and we have a full implementation team that allows us to work through that kind of service for our clients. We look at them as kind of 30-day sprints in a lot of ways, where the first 30 days we're kind of looking at the organization, getting the org chart within kind of Mastro and the Tech-NEW kind of up and running, with a lot of the direct feeds kind of working through and connecting. And then the next 60 and 90 days kind of looking through and being a receipt of that information, especially on the alternative side. I think those alternatives take a little bit longer to receive the data through that automated fashion and then be able to map them through there. So, we work through it in kind of those sprints, but realizing that the client has access to that data along the way, and realizing that it's not just turned on within that 90-day side of things. They have access to those platforms within that 30-day process, so they can see the progress, they can see the data that's coming in, and kind of working through there. And we always want to have our clients' fingerprints on there, right? How do you want it structured? How do you want it organized? Are there things that are working for you that are maybe different, or do you want things changed? And we can modify those things as part of our implementation. So it's not, a one-size-fits-all mentality. We really want to make sure that our clients are not only using it, but using it in the right way, in the most effective way, especially on the aggregation side. John, you want to talk about the FAO?
Sure. Yeah, and I'll layer in instances where we're seeing families outsource three areas: the FAO, the finance accounting outsourcing, our human resource outsourcing from an administrative perspective, and also our managed IT infrastructure. And in all three of those instances, we, as Mike said, the 90-day mark is our goal. What we do that through a process, what I would describe as baseline metrics. Where are you at today? What's your current state? And we're really digging deep into number of entities, types of entities, the purpose of those entities, really digging deep into volume of transactions, how those transactions are being done. And as we do that and develop a baseline metric for a family, we're really addressing their complexity, looking for ways to simplify their current structure. Number of bank accounts, for example, as often gets consolidated in this process. And then trying to look for ways to simplify the onboarding experience for that client. The baseline metrics tool gives a nice starting point for families to be able to say, okay, today I'm at X status, and a year from now, I've now added another 20 entities. This really helps clients understand the growth and complexity and the scalability issues that they're facing on a year-over-year basis for a family office. So we'll look at those three instances when we're onboarding a family that's outsourcing their finance, accounting, the human resources, and their managed IT infrastructure, and that 90-day sprint where we're doing it through this baseline metrics, analyzing that data, simplifying it, and then really pulling in. We spend a lot of time developing the chart of accounts for families so that we can get effective reporting and consolidated reporting for the families to make sure we're ensuring that the reporting, the deliverable, the outcome is information that both the family office executive team and the families can utilize.
So one thing I don't think you mentioned, or maybe you did, the FAO product also does partnership accounting as well, right? Or that group does partnership accounting.
We do actually have a what we refer to as Fund Services Plus. That is the AllView platform and a fund accounting and performance reporting platform. For families that are looking for that partnership level accounting, whether it's lender-like allocations in the profit center side, we're using the fund services team to do that fund level accounting, and we're complementing on the GL side through Sage Intacct or NetSuite. So sometimes you might have the management company on the GL side, but on the fund side, when we're seeing many of our complex families, they're building an investment structure that is very much like a fund. It might not be regulated, but they want accounting, they want the investment book or record, and they want the performance, not only by entity, by manager, where they can have that ability to slice it. So we do provide that service through that Fund Services Plus team. That is also linked to our partner site, which all become very integrated through our FamilySight dashboard. But our partner site then lifts that data to make the K1 and tax reporting process much smoother.
Quite amazing, because, you know, maybe up to a year ago, I didn't know who RSM was. And I maybe knew that you guys did some tax compliance work, and there's obviously a lot of added value that you guys can bring to a family office. So I guess the last question would be pricing for taking advantage of some of these services. Obviously, you said if you're a tax client, you already get a FamilySight, but what would, if they weren't and wanted to come in and leverage some of what you've built, we just get some ballpark pricing on what that would be?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, you know, if we look at it, you know, we can do things in a bundled package, or we can do it kind of a la carte, depending on, you know, what they're looking for. You know, within the different modules, you know, looking at wealth aggregation and alternative aggregation, we kind of combine those together. I would say a typical family that we've seen, you know, would operate somewhere between, you know, $40,000 to $60,000 on an annual basis. But again, I think a lot of that just depends on the number of accounts that we're working through and the number of alternative investments that come through there. So that can range. I've seen it as low as 30, and I've seen it as high as 110. You know, I think it just really kind of depends on the numbers that are coming through there. And then our FAO practice, and I apologize for the light. Apparently, the sun likes to shine right through my window today. You know, we've seen it vary on that side of things with our bill pay and GL side of things, where, you know, I've seen it where it's $500 a month. I've seen it up to $20,000 a month, depending on number of entities, number of bills that we're paying. So again, those things can vary wildly. And I think, you know, the value that I see within RSM, Andy, I mean, you mentioned it just now, is, you know, most people know us as that typical accounting firm of where we are. And I think that in a lot of ways is our bread and butter. But I think when you add in the ability for us to enhance that relationship and collaborate that with technology, it obviously that's to me that value add, where, you know, we're probably a little bit cheaper in the market in some technologies, maybe very similar to others. But when you compare that and complement that with what we're doing already with all their data, it really provides and brings to life what we're doing already, and allows the advisors to be more proactive within their families and give the better advice that we're looking for within our bread and butter of that compliance and consulting side of things that we're doing already. So, you know, again, we can price out things individually and look at it, you know, as a bundle, but you know, I think there's a lot of value in working with someone that's already has all of your information and data and providing technology is a really big value add in our view. John, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I think, look, we're competitive in the market. We're offering a set of tax consulting and technology offering to the family office community at the single and multifamily office level. We've built this FamilySight dashboard and using it as an onboarding tool for families. That is, there's not a fee for the dashboard, but there's a fee for the underlying technology that supports the dashboard. So it's a robust tool that really can help families address decisions in a timely manner.
All right, that's great. I want to thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Think we might be able to have some time for some questions later. I'm not sure. I originally thought this was going to be an hour, but I think Phil's invite was longer. So let's see where we end up with after we speak with Elvira and Trusted Family. But thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, Andy.
Andy,
Thank you.
you can ask them to put the questions in on chat for you, okay?
Okay. All right, Elvira, you with us still?
I'm here.
All right. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? You and I have known each other for many, many years. But anyway.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for inviting me today, inviting Trusted Family. It's a pretty exciting time. We've just released at the beginning of this year a brand new version of the product. So it's really a nice time to be here to talk about that. So yeah, so we've known each other. I've been with Trusted Family since 2014 when we opened up a US presence headquartered in New York. Prior to that, I was a partner with Family Office Metrics, where I met you and Phil and worked on some things together. So yeah, and then when I met the founders of Trusted Family, I was very excited about the product and the company because they were doing something that no one had really done before exactly in the way that they did it. So,
All right, it's great. So why don't you explain how Trusted Family started?
good question. So the company was started back in 2008 by two next-gen members of very large Belgian business families, and they had, still operating companies and a large shareholder group. And it was initially started as a communication platform, communication and information share for the two founding families. It was really like a project. And so once they developed it for themselves, it quickly became a business. And they saw how, other people and other companies really needed it. Other families needed it. And then fast forward to today, we have over 180 clients in 27 different countries. The US is probably our biggest market, the Americas, followed by Western Europe. And we do have some APAC and Middle East clients. What the evolution of the product really kind of followed that as well. So the initial families were very large families with very large shareholder groups, and so there was a lot of communication that needed to happen. But over time, as we developed the product, we moved into especially the U.S. market, where more family offices. Some of our clients no longer have an operating business; they have more of an investment office. So, but the idea is still the same. You have these large or even smaller shareholder groups. You have different entities. The families are spreading out. They're going into more generations. There's an increasing complexity in ownership structures and trusts. Some people are in the know. Some people are not in the know. Some people are in the business. But as shareholders, family members, owners, even married-ins, they have a need for information. So that's how it's evolved. So now we're really a communication, collaboration, information sharing, and really kind of like a central sort of operating system, if you use that expression, but for like a family operating system.
Okay, so Trusted Family today has evolved, as you just mentioned. So how can it help a typical family office? What are its attributes? And there are lots of them, so take your time to go through them all.
Thank you for that question. Yeah, it is. It's really designed, the platform, as I said, it's evolved from being a family communication tool and a collaboration tool, but also with business critical elements, right? So we're at the point where you have legal documentation, electronic signature, that sort of thing, the things that we built in. But it's really at the base, it's designed to give access and permissions to information to where it's needed to individuals as a member of a group, an individual, or a member of an entity. So as a family member who might be part of the family office, on the family office board, for example, or in the company board, family council. So each group or each member has a need for information, but for security purposes, you want them to only have that information. So it's quite robust as far as permissions go. Of course, it's secure communication. And the other thing, one of the things that's important to know about Trusted Family is that we reach everybody in the family, unlike a lot of financial technology where it's only a few members of the family. We actually will have a place for everyone. So no matter how, what generation, how involved they are in the business, and then also, their tech savviness, they all have a need to interact with the family office, whether it's, receiving documentation, attending meetings, etc. What else? I think it really, designed for collaboration as well. So there's, and we'll get into this a little bit later, you'd asked me to talk about how it's organized, but it's definitely more modular, and the ability to, set up meetings, scheduling, calendaring. I can go on, but maybe.
So how many clients use Trusted Family today, and in what capacity, and what is your ideal client?
Okay, so I think, as I mentioned, we have over 180 clients, and the ideal client is really is a client that has complexity. So we have clients with several hundred members. We also have clients that are, I think the smallest is a single household, and you can imagine it's extremely complex as far as their investment structure. So it's anywhere along the way. Any group that needs to be, collaborating, that have that kind of complexity, or they're not necessarily working together. That's kind of our sort of ideal client, I guess. Certainly into the second generation, into the third generation is really where it becomes a necessity to have a single platform.
So let's talk about how it's organized, because as we do that, it'll really, I think, become clearer to our audience as to really how it works and how it could benefit them.
So yeah, so the platform is organized. Really, the backbone of it is spaces and vaults. So spaces are, so you have a dashboard, and you as an individual, you're a member of a group, or you interact as an individual, right? So the spaces are a collaborative environment for communication, and as I said, collaboration and working together. You can think of them as a sort of working group. Imagine your family office executive committee, right? You'll have a space for the CIO, the CFO, the CEO, and that is an area where you have the ability to share documents. You have a calendar, you have an announcements board, so you have a feed of all the information that happens. You have a member directory that, and then also there is a private and group chat. So it really kind of takes all those kind of tools that people are using for communication, collaboration, and it's private, encrypted. You can exchange signatures, etc. So within that's just kind of an example of a space. Some of our spaces, that would be a space that represents a working group. You might have a group for the family council that can be, that takes decisions on behalf of the family. You can imagine how that might work, right? So, and then we also would typically set up a space for the family at large. And then any other working group will have that space on there. And there's also very extensive permissioning system. So I can control as an owner or an admin of a space, I can control not just, I can control what people are permitted to do, not just the access that they have, right? So if they're permitted to create content, distributed content, make announcements. So you can really, depending on how collaborative that group would be generally, right? So for example, like the family at large, you would give everyone permission to kind of create content, announcements, an announcements board, anniversaries, weddings, etc. Whereas if you have the shareholder group, you might want the head of shareholder relations to be in charge of all the content that's distributed.
So as an example, if the family office has a council, so family office council, knows that council is the oversight for the family office, and they review, budget to actual and financials on a quarterly basis. You can calendar the meetings, you can in advance send financials to the members via I guess a space. And they would be the only ones, or the members of the council would be the only ones that could see this information. And it would also be stored in Trusted Family. So if they wanted to look at prior meetings minutes or information that was sent around, they could go right in to the system and look at it that way. Is that sort of?
That's exactly how it works. It's absolutely. So you have this concept of group access, right? So you have the council or you have the committee. They have a document storage, they have document storage and sharing, and everything stays on the platform. And that's the other thing that's a really key important point for for family offices, is this is really going to replace email for two things. For one is distribution of documents. So a lot of times, you won't, it's a secure place. The information will stay there and it can be accessed. You can see it and you can know that it was received. The other thing is that a lot of times with the email, right, your clients might not be in the network. You can't always require them to have, a family office password or a family office email, right? So you actually always know that the information that you're distributing to them is secure. So that replaces that. And then also the conversation. So where a lot of people who are used to having a chat system, if they're working together, we provide that now for everyone who's in that system. So you can have group chats and individual chats.
Okay, so we talk about vaults a little bit.
Yeah, so the vault space is where you are distributing documents to individuals. So for example, you might, the collaborative spaces are, correspond to working groups. Each individual will have a private vault, when you can have a private vault or a group vault. So the way that we've had them set up, so they're really separate from they're separated. They're assigned by, as I said, individual or entity. So for example, you might have, and I'll just give you kind of an example of ownership via trusts, right? So you have each individual family member will have their own private vault. And then we can have vaults set up by individual trusts and or entities. So if you have information that belongs to a trust, that person will be sharing that vault. The vault system is pretty extensive. You have the ability to deposit information without being into the trust, into the vault. So do you have any specific questions about that?
So if we can you just clarify for everyone what the difference is between spaces? So there's two places where information can be exchanged or stored in Trusted Family. One is using a space, which maybe has less permissions or it's less confidential or private than vaults, where you can really kind of lock things up. Or am I not understanding that correctly? Just
the idea, and I think that maybe the idea is being a group access or individual access, so that you can lock down any of the information in the spaces, but there are spaces for collaboration, right? So collaboration necessitates that you're collaborating on information as well as meetings and information about individuals that are in that group, right? So your permissions are you're locked down in the group as well. So if I go into my platform, the Trusted Family, and I am a member of certain groups such as the business board or the investment committee or the family council, I will see a view of only that, and only those people who are in that group will even see that it's there. Okay, so you won't even know. It won't come up. You'll have an admin of each of those groups. Set down the permissions. So what I mentioned earlier is that, for example, if you're in the family office executive committee, that'll be an area where everybody who's in there will have the ability generally to create content, to post documents, share with each other. You'll have a calendar that will be your private calendar, and you'll also have these different modules. You'll have the announcements board and the chat, and that will be shared by just one small group. And that is the space. Now the vault concept is where it's really like a vault. So it's locked down information The kind of information that you'd put in there would be, you know, your K-1s, tax document, any financials, personal, but it's to a person. Maybe you might create vaults for household, you might create vaults for each trust that you have, and then give access to those vaults to the individuals who are part of those trusts. So we have clients that have hundreds and hundreds of trusts, and ownerships of operating companies via trust. And so each one of those will have their own set of documentation.
So, I mean, at the highest level, spaces and vaults are just files with different attributes to them. You just call them spaces and vaults because that's trusted family. If a family office wanted to set up, I guess, a space to put education materials for family members, that's a possibility, correct?
Yes, absolutely. That would definitely be a use case for that. So we have that where if you are tasked with setting up next gen education, for example, you would set up a space. And it's not just the document sharing, it's really collaboration on top of that, because you have calendaring, we have a doodle-like scheduling function. We have to-dos, we have workflows. So you have to-dos and assigned tasks within that. You have a calendar system with note taking in that system. So you can take your meeting minutes while you're there, assign to-dos to people. So you do have a follow-up on tasks. So it's really a working group. And then in addition to that, the folder, the file, the document structure is part of that space. So where the vault is really a lockdown vault, and there's other attributes to it as well.
So we also talked about being able to use Trusted Family as sort of the intranet for the family office itself. You can, I guess, you have an office calendar, so people can see when they have days off, when the office is open and closed. But you could also use the chat function for communication, but really to post internal communications and files and things to share with the family office executives and or staff that work at the office, as well as family members.
Yes, exactly. And then you could also have shared spaces. So yeah, so you would have so the idea behind that is really to be able to communicate with anyone that you need to communicate with, right? So if we wanted to set up, we would set up maybe, so just give you an example. We're going to have a family office project that's working with the family. So you have somebody in the family office might be tasked with this next gen education. You would set up a space for the next gen education working group where you would admit some family members, you would admit some of the family office. And so they have their very private workspace. And then you can surface that later on, once there's just many ways of setting it up. But it's always, and I think people who work together, they have this kind of second nature to know, like they use tools like Slack or Notion or Teams or, Google Suite, and they have that way of working. This is to replicate that, but it also is to kind of replicate and mirror how you work today, right? You're going to say you have all of these disparate groups. You've got your foundation, right? You might have, and they need to communicate with the family. Then you've got your family council, you've got your investment committee, you have a shareholder group. Then you maybe have some private properties as well that you need to be managed. And so all of that can be on the platform. So you could have, a space for the property managers. And so you have a shared, airplane, for example, or a lake house, and you can calendar on that as well. So you admit people into that who would be part of that, who would be the manager and who would be the potential users of those assets and properties. And so you could, you just go on, you check on the calendar and you see who's using what at what point. So that's just another example. And I mean, that's maybe why it gets a little bit, it gets complex. And in these families that are our clients, their whole ecosystem is very complex. So we try to really simplify that, right? And have a central place, a central system for that.
So can you talk a little bit about the system administrator function? Because we have to have, I guess, a designated person that kind of gives permissions and controls the environment, correct?
Yeah, so you do have what we call owners. It doesn't work exactly like a system administrator. You do have a network admin, right? So you have somebody who we set up the initial platform for you and then designated an admin who can also give access to others. So you have someone who's permitted to send invitations, because this is an invitation only platform, right? So we can send invitations to the people that need to be on them and assign initial spaces. Now, at that level, you're going to need to assign an admin function to different people. So keep in mind, right? So say I'm the executive assistant and I'm tasked with setting up the platform and inviting all of the senior executives in the family. And I'm going to set up a couple of groups. I'm going to set up the family office executive committee, and then I will either leave that committee or I don't set it up myself. So what I can do is I can assign the ability to set up spaces to someone in that group, if that makes sense. I know it may sound a little bit confusing, but I want to simplify it. It's basically, the idea is that you don't have a network admin that has got access, like on a lot of social media platforms. You don't have someone who can see inside everything. And you always know via the member directory and via our member feature who's in which group. So if you ask their executive assistant, set up a few of these groups, invite the people that need to be in them, and then, oh, by the way, take yourself out of them, right? Assign somebody else that function. You can do that. Or I could give you, so Andy, if you were the head of the family office, I'd say, I'm going to give you the ability to set up spaces. That doesn't mean that you're going to have to be responsible for setting up all the spaces, but you have the ability to do that. And once you set up a space, only you and the people that you invite would be allowed in there. So it's really quite simple. It's funny. This is an interesting format because it's quite a lot easier if I had a demo, and I know we don't do that here, but it makes it challenging but interesting to try to explain for people to kind of conceptualize. And I think if you think about it in terms of any other tool that you'd use, like you're not going to send a group email. You'll send a group email to everybody in your executive committee. Well, you no longer have to do that, right? You just post something. And then you send a notification, and then they receive a notification, which I haven't mentioned yet, but we do have fully functioning, and actually we're mobile first. So this platform, this version of the platform was designed with mobile in mind, versus one that was started in 2008. So really has a pretty seamless experience. So the idea is that if you were going to collaborate without a collaboration tool in this kind of central operating system, you'd have a group email, right? Or you'd have a chat on your phone. So this brings everything in there. And it's the same thing, like whatever that group chat that you would have for your family office committee, you would have that. If a family has a next gen group or a household has their own, you can set those up as well. And they're able to do more than just chat. They're able to do a lot more. So you see Phil's coming back on. Am I out of time?
I want to ask you a question.
Oh, yes, okay.
How does it work with DocuSign?
Oh, so actually, we have built our own electronic signature in the new platform. And we did that for a couple of reasons. So one is that it doesn't have to leave the platform with DocuSign. Even if it's an encrypted connection, you're going out of the platform. So we decided that we would incorporate electronic signature into the platform, and it has the same credentials, the same certificates as any other one.
All right, so next question was, what is the implementation process and how long does it typically take?
Okay, so the implementation process can take, we can do it in a pretty short time. I mean, the platform itself is really kind of off the shelf, but it will take as long as you need it to do or as short as you need it to. We've done it in a month. We could do it in 3 months. And I'll tell you, it really depends on how organized you are in advance, and if there is someone who can take the time. So it's really a question of your availability. The other thing in the implementation process that we do, our first step is really to understand how you work today. And then also I've had clients say that just going through the implementation process and the questionnaires that we give them is kind of aspirational as well. It's like, maybe that's not the best way to work, but we try to mirror how you work today with your groups and your members. How does information flow, right? So who's responsible for supplying that information, who has access to that information? We kind of do a grid, and we really try to understand. We want to understand the entities. We want to understand the ownership. Are there lots of trust? Do we have to set all of those up? And then you want to see, like, if we do, so really it's a function of complexity, but we really want to understand that. And then what are the changes that you want to make? You know, this is an opportunity maybe for some, you know, spring cleaning or whatever. And then so at that point, we'll also think of, like, we can train admins, we can train the entire family. One of the things that we do like to do, because we hit the whole family, it's sometimes nice for us to kind of retro plan to a meeting, like a family meeting or an assembly, where they can roll it out. Because it's not, you know, we could do a soft launch with the family office or family board or family council or whoever might be that project team that's responsible for that. So the answer to the question is, it can be a month, it can be 3, and we can do it, you know, in stages quite easily.
And what's the cost?
Okay, so the cost is a combination of an initial implementation fee and then an annual subscription. And so it ranges from $3,000 to $5,000 on the implementation. And then it really depends on if you can hire us to continue. And then the license fee is starting at 10,000 up to 25, 30,000, depending. Again, it depends on the complexity and it depends on the size. We don't do necessarily a 1-for-1 subscription, but groups. And then there's also, you know, different features, integrations, et cetera, things that we do either custom build or that we'll be rolling out. So we are still, this year, we're still in the initial phase, early adopter, although, you know, the product's been out for a year, if anyone's interested.
So I guess in summary, sort of, you know, the way I view it as a very high level, and you can correct if I'm wrong. I view this as really a great tool for a family office to use to securely communicate to its clients, the family members, because you can put secure information out there. You can post economic updates from some of the managers, so if they want to read some of that, and it's just an easy way to post information that may be client or family office specific without worrying about it being distributed through the web. So you wouldn't, you know, you don't want to be sending some of that information. You could tax returns and all that stuff, and even their client reports could be put in their vault or on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, depending on how the family works. It's great. It could be also a great place for the family office, for HR policies and employee handbooks and all those things that family offices use internally, instead of using a shared drive on a server or something, because I just think that this platform would be a lot easier to use to post all that information. You have an HR box and new notifications come up when new things change and all of that. And also to use it for family office councils and meetings and lots of other things. I'm probably missing a bunch along the way, but I just, you know, I find it to be very attractive from that perspective, and it's not that expensive. So that's just my personal opinion. Did I miss anything?
I think that was an excellent summary. There are just a couple of things I'd like to add, if I might.
Sure.
So, just talking about, like, what's next for Trusted Family, and one of the things that we've been thinking about, especially with the new product, we also have a new CEO who just joined us, and a new kind of vision about how, you know, where are we going in the next generation of Trusted Family. And I think with the kind of clients that we have some of the largest business families in the world on the platform. And so there's a lot of education to be had. There's a lot of information sharing. We're doing, the next phase is doing templates so that a lot of families, they want to know, how is another family doing this? How is another family office doing this? So we have a lot of that information anonymously, of course. So we can build out templates for meetings or any types of projects that you're doing. So that's one of the things. And then we're also coming up, we're just releasing this month integration with Google. We're working on Microsoft integration and then other integrations with financial software over the next year. So there's a lot coming up, new and trusted family.
Andy, I think we're getting to the end. I want to thank you, Andy. Great job, really. Elvira, it's great to catch up with you again. I'm going to try to do it one-on-one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great presentation. Come a long way, that's for sure.
Thank you.
John and Michael, very clear on what you're doing and where you're going. So I want to thank you also for your presentation. I think we had a lot of people listening in, taking notes, and I look forward to our next program on January 18th. And everyone else, have a merry holiday season, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Phil. Thanks, everyone.